Dusty, have you ever gone on a hunting trip?
Well, yeah.
You pack all your stuff. Let's say you're driving to New Hampshire. Let's say I'm driving to Ohio, and you're hunting for 4, 5, 6 days. What's the biggest challenge you usually have?
You're going to stop multiple times to get gas, and I worry about odor the whole way.
It's always in the back of your head. After talking to our friend Tim Gauthier, we realized that there's a better solution that is portable. And that solution is called the ScentLock Enforcer. This nifty little device, about the size of an iPhone, it produces ozone. Ozone is this naturally occurring O3 molecule that actually naturally removes odors, kills bacteria, binds to all kinds of odor particles in the air, and basically makes you scent-free instead of like a scent cover-up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
You can put this in your tote. It operates off of a USB and has an 8-hour battery life.
It's the personal ozone generator.
It is the personal ozone generator. If you want to check it out, go to ScentLockEnforcer.com. That's ScentLock Enforcer.com. Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by ScentLock Enforcer, episode number 180. Dean Capuano. The History of Swarovski, Late Season Deer Hunting Rhode Island, and Buying the Perfect Binos. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by the ScentLock Enforcer, the Euro Hanger, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
This is Craig Meyer from Plato's Energy, and you're about to push play on my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry, Deer Hunting Podcast. Hi, this is Ken Jorgensen from Ruger. You're about to listen to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. My name's Steve Pass, and I'm a deer hunter from Pennsylvania. And you're about to push play on my favorite deer hunting podcast, the Big Buck Registry.
Welcome to another episode of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. I can't thank you enough for pushing the play button on your phone, whatever audio device you decided to tune in today to get some of that great hunting knowledge that we bring to this show each and every week, where we dissect the habits of diehard deer hunters from across the country and figure out what they do so you can do it as well. And as usual, I am joined by my good friend and co-host from Ohio, Dusty Phillips. How are you, my friend?
Well, I'm just blessed that everybody is joining us again this week, Jay. And, another great show coming out. And if you're still hunting, we wish you the best of luck in the whitetail woods.
That's right. Hopefully you're still out there. There are some seasons that are still open. In fact, our guest this week, Dean Capuano from Swarovski, is joining us once again. He joined just a while back, and his season where he lives is still going on. We get to talk about that a little bit down in Rhode Island, which is one of our New England states. And I don't know why I haven't joined up with Dean to hunt in January, but you know what? I think I might need to do that this year.
Yeah, it'd be a great trip down, Jay.
It really would. I mean, it's just down the road. Not that I don't like visiting you, Dusty, of course.
Yeah.
No, I do. And it's a long drive. But regardless, and of course, there's always that Lake Erie effect that's probably going to, but now I have a Jeep, so that's different. It wouldn't matter.
Right.
But literally, I could be at Dean's doorstep in 2 hours. So I don't know why I don't do that, but I need to do that. But Dean Capuano is coming up a little bit later. Dusty, how's it going in your neck of the woods?
Right now's the time here in Ohio. If you're still hunting, we got a front coming in, a little weather coming in. Looks like should be a good late season hunting here in Ohio. We got muzzleloader coming up January and 3 days of muzzleloader. And it I like late season. Real early season, late October. Then I like late season whitetail here in Ohio, and it just the cold weather forces them to hit a food source. And man, if you can get yourself set up on a food source here in Ohio, it's not guaranteed, but wow, your odds are really, really good.
Yeah, I'm starting to see whitetail in New Hampshire move around in daylight again, which is unusual compared to what it was during deer season. I'm actually seeing them on the hoof. traveling in their normal snow patterns somewhat. Not quite yarding up yet, but definitely on their patterns, except now it's during the day. I don't know where they were 15 days ago, but I sure could have used a visual back then and just didn't get it. But that's typical New Hampshire. But we got some good snow, more snow on the way. I'm going to set my sights on coyote hunting in New England here in just a little bit. Probably a little bit before we go to SHOT Show, but definitely a lot after. And, of course, we're going to SHOT Show in Vegas this year. If you're going to be at SHOT Show this year and you're listening to the show, we'd like to know if you're going to be there so we can connect. So definitely shoot us an email, Jay or Dusty at BigBuckRegistry.com if you're going to Vegas for the SHOT Show the week of the 16th through the 20th. Well, in just a minute, we're going to turn to Dean Capuano and see what's going on in his world these days. But before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
The Deer News this week is sponsored by the Euro Hanger. You don't have to spend big bucks to hang your big buck. Get yourself a Euro Hanger. Facebook.com/Eurohanger, EUROHANGER.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week, Whitetail Nation, are deer numbers in decline? This story was originally featured on the Deer and Deer Hunting website and was written by Steve Sorensen. States that normally harvest more than 100,000 deer saw precipitous declines over the last 2 years, prompting thousands of hunters to wonder why. Where are all the deer? Has the herd been decimated by disease? Are predators and poachers to blame? Overharvest? Habitat loss? Bad weather? Midwestern hunters saw steep declines in harvests from 2012 to 2014. Ohio was down almost 20%, Illinois down 19%, Wisconsin down 17%, and Missouri down 17%. Indiana and Iowa were hardly any better at about 12% each, but Minnesota and Michigan were even worse, down 24% and 22% respectively. Pennsylvania hunters ended the season with similar declines. They harvested fewer deer than in any season since the controversial herd reduction and antler restriction program began in 2002. Although the 2013 Pennsylvania harvest rose slightly from 2012, the 2014 harvest was down 11% from 2012. South of the Mason-Dixon line, West Virginia and Virginia also saw dramatic reductions in deer harvest. West Virginia was off 21% and Virginia was off 10%. Keep going south, North and South Carolina's harvests dropped by 8% and 7% respectively. Add all the numbers up, and these states produced almost 500,000 fewer deer in 2014 than they did in 2012. To compare that would be as though two states in the heart of Whitetail Range, Pennsylvania and Ohio, harvested almost no deer for a year. No wonder hunters are asking so many questions. What's going on? Can the total percentage drop of 15.9% in these leading whitetail states mean 13 state game departments are all on the wrong tracks? Whatever else is true, it's clear that states differ widely in habitat, weather, and predatory pressure. The effects of disease and cultural interests of hunters also differ. Deer biologists recognize that these questions have no one-size-fits-all answer and are as ready as anyone to consider every factor that influences the whitetail habitat, populations, and hunting. Across the Whitetail Range, managing the deer herd is challenging work. That raises an important question. Who wants to be responsible to maintain populations at levels that keeps everyone happy? Thankfully, there are people willing to do that, but perfection eludes them because they must constantly respond to the ebb and flow of deer populations caused by countless factors, many of which are outside their control. And one might even be a hidden time bomb, the fact that hunters themselves are on the decline. Wolf hunting in Michigan okayed by Governor Snider, but it's still illegal. This story was originally featured on the Detroit Free Press website. Governor Rick Snider has signed a law that would authorize wolf hunting if Congress or federal courts revisit the issue. Michigan state lawmakers quickly passed the bill after the Michigan Appeals Court recently declared a 2014 law unconstitutional. The law signed Wednesday defines wolves as a game species and authorizes the Natural Resources Commission to designate game. Wolf hunting is not allowed in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota because of 2014 federal court ruling. A judge threw out an Obama administration decision to remove gray wolves in the western Great Lakes region from the endangered species list. The new law won't take effect until wolves are removed from the federal endangered species list. Michigan's only hunt was in 2013 when 22 wolves were killed in the Upper Peninsula. Harlem deer caught in city-state tussle has died. This story was originally featured on the New York Times website and was reported by Andy Newman. A white-tailed deer that went from being a minor celebrity in Harlem to a cause célèbre after its capture died in captivity on Friday, moments after it was to be driven upstate and released. The preliminary causes of death, according to a New York City park spokesman, were stress and the day and a half that the deer spent at a city animal shelter in East Harlem. But that did not begin to tell the absurd tale of how the buck, known as JR for Jackie Robinson or Lefty because of his crumpled left antler, came to die. The deer had become the latest and most unlikely casualty of the feud between Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Andrew M. Cuomo, an animosity that has manifested itself mostly on big issues like education, safety at homeless shelters, and funding mass transit. But the tussle over the deer was extraordinary even by the standards set by Mr. Cuomo and Mr. de Blasio. All day Thursday and into Friday, the city and state issued competing and sometimes self-contradicting updates on the deer and what would be done with him. The city announced plans on Thursday afternoon to kill the deer, citing advice from the state wildlife officials. But that evening, Mr. Cuomo offered to help the city move the deer, despite the state's policy not to issue permits to relocate deer because acceptable release sites are not available and because the poor chances of deer survival do not warrant the risks. Then, just before 2 p.m. Friday, with workers from the State Department of Environmental Conservation and the Federal Department of Agriculture gathering at the Animal Care Centers of New York City Shelter on East 110th Street, a city park spokesman said that the deer had died. Lifelike buck decoy catches roadside poachers in 5 minutes. This story was originally featured on the OutdoorHub.com website. The Illinois DNR is cracking down on poachers. On the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Conservation Facebook page, CPOs Michael Goten and Chris Geschleff are seen with their new poacher catching buck decoy, and it works really well. The two officers deployed the decoy on the side of the road one morning, and within 5 minutes, lead began to fly. According to the Post, a 13-year-old boy from Greene County, Illinois, was the one who pulled the trigger. Now, before you make any judgments on this young man, it was actually the boy's grandfather who directed him to shoot the deer. Hopefully the boy learned not to listen to his grandfather on such matters. He should be teaching his grandson the importance of ethical hunting and making a fair, clean kill. Instead, he's got the youngster doing his dirty work. Hunters need to have respect for the game they chase. So, roadside poachers, consider this a warning. The next time you pull over and reach for your gun, take a second glance because you may not be shooting at the real thing. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Dean CAPUANO.
Dean CAPUANO, welcome back to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
Very good. Pleasure to be back. Happy to be here.
Hey, we like return guests because we get to find out what's been going on in your deer woods. And you tell a heck of a good deer story, let's put it that way.
Yeah, and that means I didn't upset you guys too much last time. You know, I'll be back one more time.
How could you have upset some guys from New England, man? You're always welcome on this show. Absolutely.
No. Yeah, there's definitely, I do a lot of traveling throughout the country, and it's nice to have some camaraderie with the guys back home, that's for sure. Definitely.
So what's going on in your world these days, Dean?
You know, it's just getting down to the end of the season, and here in Rhode Island anyway, it's finally getting cold. I mean, I've had a great hunting season with Swarovski Optic and some of the trips we've done for the television show and all that, but, there's nothing that makes me happier than hunting back home and chasing the whitetail deer. So it's finally, tomorrow I think it's dipping down until like the low teens. So it should get the deer moving. It's been a little bit of a slow season here in Rhode Island for the deer anyways. I mean, they're there, and I've gotten some great trail cam pictures of them all season long, but all the big ones, it's been, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. We just haven't had that real cold weather to get them up during daylight hours, but So hopefully this front moving in will change things a little bit in the last couple of days of gun season.
They do have a knack for that midnight hour, don't they? The big ones.
It's unbelievable, and I've really gotten addicted to the whole trail cam thing the last few years. And you really see it. You see what they're doing. You know they're there. Fortunately, I'm pretty selective here back home on what we're shooting off our properties, and I really go after specific bucks. But you really get to watch what they do. It's amazing. I think back to before I didn't have these cameras and you used to just hunt and you try to read sign and all that, and you still do that, but it's just amazing to see how some of these big boys, they just, for whatever reason, are just nocturnal animals, except for those couple of exceptions throughout the year.
Right. It's uncanny how they do that, and it's got to be a survival mechanism. I'm sure it's just amazing how in tune they are with that. On the last show, Dean, we talked a lot about you and where you came from, your roots in Rhode Island, and playing professional hockey, and your college career. And we talked a lot about how you got into the company Swarovski, where you are now.
Yep.
And how I think it was your sister that had a little bit to do with kind of pushing you over there, and ended up being their communications director, as I recall.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she doesn't let me forget that every time I see her.
Yep. And then you launched your own TV show to promote the brand. And we talked all about that on episode 110 of the podcast. And I'd like to get a little caught up where you've been since then. That was, about 70, almost 70 shows ago at this point.
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah, it's been a little while, but I also wanted to talk to you about the history of the company, if we could. We've kind of turned this corner. We're looking at different gun companies and gun accessory companies and manufacturers, and trying to get into some of the roots of where those companies came from and how they play a role in American history and our history as hunters. So if we could, let's touch a little bit on Swarovski history, if we could, and find out where they came from and what they're doing.
That's one of the really cool things with working for this company. There is such a history. I mean, where it all began was way back in 1898. Daniel Swarovski, back over in Austria, came up with one of the world's first crystal cutting and grinding machine. And, he started making these little crystal figurines for all the royalty in Europe, and, did that for almost 50 years. It wasn't until 1949 that we started making binoculars for the Austrian and German military over in Europe. And,
no kidding.
Yeah, so that's how all the roots of the optics really started, and it's just a really storied, traditional company, still family-owned, still owned by the Swarovski family even today. But as we progressed, we didn't really start marketing binoculars and rifle scopes here in the U.S. till about 1988. And when the company first opened, I think we had 3 people just kind of, peddling binoculars, basically, and trying to basically teach the U.S. hunter how to even pronounce the company.
Right.
At that point, it was all about, we had some competitors like Dice and that had been there for a while, and, here comes this Swarovski company that nobody knew how to pronounce, and we made some really good binoculars, and that kind of went on through the late 80s, early 90s, and back in the mid 90s, we started to grow a little bit, started to get some brand recognition, and certainly with the hunters, and definitely with the bird watchers as well. That crowd kind of really helped us along with the binoculars. And then in 1998, we launched our EL binocular, and that was the one that really put us on the map big time. I can remember myself and another gentleman who had been with the company for a couple of years were kind of the optics experts at that point. I think in 98, we maybe had 25 people in the company at that point, and our most expensive binocular at that point was $800. It was our SLC binocular that was sold in their catalog for $800, and then they came along with this EL binocular. And the very first time I saw it, I'll never forget it. One of the Europeans put it on my desk in front of me, and they said this binocular is going to be $1,550. Wow. Myself and the other gentleman, it was a huge jump from what we previously had. And myself and the other gentleman kind of looked at them and said, "We're not going to sell any of these at that price. You're crazy."
Right.
We were back ordered for the first 28 months of production, and we couldn't make enough of them once they started to hit the market. So,
right?
I'm man enough. I'm always man enough to admit when I'm wrong. That's one thing that most people around me would say, but I was definitely wrong on that one. That's for sure.
So what makes them so different? I mean, it sounds like you have a very colorful past, and seems like a lot of the the companies that are making really good lenses and things like that come out of that area of the world. It seems to be that German influence type thing or Austrian influence. Why do the good crystals come out of that area?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, number one, they've been doing it for a long time. So, a lot of the technologies that even some of the American companies use nowadays come out of what Europe figured out how to do. And the other reason, there's a big glass supplier. One of the largest glass suppliers in the world is out of Germany. So, they've been doing it in that area for a long time. But at the end of the day, why they're so good is it's about the way the lenses are handled. It's the cutting, the grinding, the polishing, the coatings that they put on the lenses. I mean, we can sit here all day and talk about weight and field of view and all these other technological features that are very important. There's no question. But for me, when someone asks me why are they a little bit more expensive or why are they so good, it really comes down to the care that we take on each and every lens element in that, product. Because what people don't tend to think about is, let's take a binocular, for example. A lot of people will look at, well, there's an objective lens and there's an ocular lens. What they forget about is between those two, there's probably anywhere from 8 to 16 lens elements, whether it's more lenses or the prisms or, whatever piece of glass that might be inside it. And each piece of glass inside that product serves its own particular function. And that's the biggest thing with us. We don't treat every piece of glass the same. We treat every glass depending on what it's doing in the product. In other words, if it's gathering light, if it's flipping the image, we treat that particular piece of glass very individualized to the overall product. And that's really what drives up cost. And that's what out in the field, when you can see in low light and look like you can see at nighttime, that's where you really see the difference.
I mean, I feel like every unit is almost custom made in a sense. I mean, it's kind of the feel I get when I talk to people about this stuff.
Yeah. I have people that come into our facility on tours, and even after being with the company for 20 years, that's one of the things that still amazes me. People come in, and I think they have a preconceived notion that, they'll see big machines putting these products together, and as technologically advanced as we have gotten, when you come in our facility, whether it's here in Cranston, Rhode Island, with some of the repair and assembly we do, or over in Europe, individual people that are putting the product together with their bare hands, and they're trained on it. So in a sense, it is custom in the fact that we know every single product that leaves that building goes through, on the average, a rifle scope or a binocular will go through 15 or 20 different quality control stages throughout when it's being either assembled or put together. So we know what the product can do. So in that sense, we're not mass produced. I mean, we're going into the end of the year here, and we've got several $1 million of back orders, which doesn't make me overly happy because you hate to leave money on the table. But on the same token, we don't mass produce the stuff. I mean, we do what we can do, and we don't, our philosophy with the company is we really like to hire people for longevity. So we don't, hire people just to get them in to catch up on back orders and then fire people. We really take it on a big picture kind of thing and don't over mass produce. And then that's why you do have that custom feel to each and every product. Gotcha.
Let's talk a little bit about how to buy that binocular. I mean, what is it that makes them that much different? I mean, and you told me about the line and how it's made. But from a hunter's experience or a bird watcher's experience or whoever you are that's picking up this set of binoculars, and I assume it's the same with the scopes, can you describe what the differences are between looking through a Swarovski scope versus the standard run-of-the-mill scope you buy at a big box store?
Yeah, it's one of those things that, we tend to call certain binoculars the oh my God binoculars, because when you get people to look through it for the first time, that's usually the first expression that comes out of their mouth. It's really just, it's a hard thing to put into words exactly what it is. And
Right.
That's what I always tell people that are thinking about buying it. They need to, they may go into their local dealer and at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they'll still look really good. But what they need to do is take it outside in low light and really see the difference. And, for me, it's especially binoculars. It's not just a pair of optics that I put up looking at deer.
it really makes me a better hunter. I mean, I hunt a lot of spots here in Rhode Island that, have some big cornfields and things like that we all know. On many occasions I've spotted a buck that where I thought he was coming out is not what he was doing. He comes out the opposite end of the field, and I'm seeing him at really low light, so it allows me to kind of, move my stand or change my philosophy about tomorrow's hunt. So I really use it when it comes to that, and that's what people forget about. You get into those low light situations, it really is about what you can see, what the animals are doing, and then if that trophy of a lifetime pops out, you want to make sure it's him and make sure it's the one you want to shoot. So it's the whole experience for me. It's not any one thing. Yes, it's the quality of the glass. That's the most important thing, but it's also the feel of the binocular. It's the way they feel in your hands. It's the field of view. It's what you're seeing through the product. It's really the overall experience of the product.
Interesting. All right, so it's more than just what you experience in the store. It really is a low light level or low light situation where things change from the so-so binoculars to these.
That's really where you tell the difference. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. You can go into a dealer at 1:00 in the afternoon, look through binoculars, and a lot of them are gonna, if people don't know what to look for, the biggest thing with us is you're getting that crystal clear, sharp image right out to the edges of the glass, and that's what really makes the difference too. If you're in a pair of binoculars and you know what to look for, you can look at some of our competitors, and sure, it's just like anything else. You're playing golf, you play hockey, you play baseball. You said you just came from baseball practice. Well, you're standing at the plate with a baseball bat. A baseball bat's got that sweet spot. When you get the ball in that spot with the right bat speed, the ball goes out of the park. You don't even feel it off that bat because it's the sweet spot of everything. It's the same thing with binoculars. A lot of the higher ends will have good center glass. In other words, that sweet spot in the middle of the glass, in the center of your field of view, it's going to look really good. But where things can go bad quickly is as you go out to the edges. And, a lot of people don't understand why that's important. For a guy like me who hunts a lot, okay, in the Northeast, you're in thick woods, you don't see it as much. But you go out west and you're looking for muleys on the hillside, he's not always going to just pop up in the middle of your glass. You might catch him on the edge, and you're going to become a better glasser the more field of view and everything that's usable and clear. So that's another thing that really separates the product. And, when you get that overall clear image into your eyes versus, maybe some of these other competitors have fuzzy edges, it's going to make a huge difference.
Gotcha. Okay. It's interesting that you say that because in our 10 rapid fire questions section of the show, and I'm letting the cat out of the bag on one of the questions here, so bear with me. But one of the questions that
I love to have answers to questions before they get asked.
All right. One of the questions we often ask is, what's that one thing you can't hunt without? And Dusty backed me up on this, is that I'd say 75 to 80% of the time, people usually say binoculars.
Yeah, for sure.
And those folks that say binoculars are not they're buying the high-end binoculars. They're the ones that need to have that.
Yeah, and they're spending a lot of time in them. And that's the one challenge that we have with our rifle scopes, as good as they are, technically, optically, all this stuff. The average American hunter sometimes can't justify the rifle scope because he only thinks about it, that he pulls the rifle scope up and takes a shot and that's it. With the binoculars, they can justify it a lot easier because they're using them so much. So that's always a challenge for us as a company, but you're absolutely right that the binocular, always comes up as the top 2 or 3 things that people would need to purchase to be a hunter.
Right. Yep. Very much so.
I think a good quality binocular is often overlooked to spend that extra money on.
Yeah, and I use the same argument with the rifle scopes. So you can't shoot what you can't see, and until people get out in the field with our binos and really have that experience of being able to spot stuff, it's tough for me to put into words what that is. But when they see the difference, and when they go to our product, it's tough to go back to anything else. Because even here in the Northeast, when I do a ton of hunting, there's plenty of nights that I'm out there that those deer start to show up, 5 minutes after legal shooting time. It's getting dark. You're not going to shoot them, but it still allows you to be hunting and, okay, I got to get in another 100 yards to get on that buck before he gets out to the field. And, So that's such a big part for me that I don't think hunters think a lot about. I mean, it's my livelihood here. These deer sometimes tend to move really late, so you're always kind of moving around trying to get in another 100 yards on them and get them before it gets too dark.
Gotcha. So, Dean, you're in Rhode Island as we speak, and I think you mentioned that you were on your way to a hockey tournament. Yep. or game of some sort outdoors, which is kind of common this time of year, especially in New England, as the ice starts to freeze and you can play outside. And I'd like to kind of pick your brain a little bit about what it's like to hunt in Rhode Island. We talked about this a little bit in the last show, but I want to kind of feel it out and see what it's like to hunt where you are with seasons and dates and what types of things you look forward to, and how do you use some of the techniques and skill sets and tools that you acquire through the company that you work for in the areas that you're hunting.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate here in this state. We have a ton of deer. We have some really good deer. We have a really long season. I mean, our bow season opens up September 15th, and then that goes through the end of January. We've got some gun seasons mixed in. We've got black powder and shotgun right now. Shotgun goes until this Sunday. But then we've got another month of bow hunting, which really has become my favorite time of year to hunt, especially this year. The temperatures have been unseasonably warm, and the hunting hasn't been great. I mean, the deer are there, but they're just all moving at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. The other problem here is we had a really late acorn drop this year. It was pretty amazing. I mean, Halloween, there was no acorns on the ground. There were deer everywhere. And then our acorns dropped around, between like November 7th and the 10th. It was like they dumped them out. And then ever since then, the hunting really, really slowed down. The deer just have had so much food right on the ground, they haven't moved much. So it's been pretty challenging. But I think now with this cold weather and the acorns kind of disappearing under the leaves and hopefully the snow pretty soon, that'll help things along, that's for sure.
Have you guys had much for snow there?
No, I think we had, maybe a dusting last week when I was away, but it was gone the next day. And, that's the one big thing here. Once the snow hits, then they become a little easier to find, too. But, a lot of the pieces we hunt here, they're smaller pieces. And we've got some really good deer. I mean, I've shot a couple over 150 in the last few years, and chasing one right now that I shouldn't even say chasing. He's outsmarting me and has been for about 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
That should be in that same class.
With the late acorn drop, what did you do this year to change your strategy on and trying to get on a good mature buck?
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of the places I hunt, I mean, obviously we're hunting the food sources early on, and then when that dropped, for me, I just got deeper in the swamps. I just felt like whether it was the does or the bucks, they weren't moving much because they had everything right at their feet, and they were just sticking in the heavy, thick stuff. So I just got as close to those swamps as possible, and that's the big thing here. Because the pieces aren't huge, it's pretty easy to find where their cover is and where their bedding areas are. So I just tried to bump in as close as I could to them without scaring things out of there. And I've been seeing really good deer, just not the ones I'm looking for. And we can actually shoot a lot of deer here in Rhode Island. I think we get you can get 3 bucks and 6 does, but the way it's worked with me the last few years, I like to just get focused on one buck, and that's about all I take every year anyways off the pieces that we do. So, I get pretty focused on one at a time.
Gotcha. So
I guess I should say.
You went a little deeper, and has that paid off by being deeper into the swamps?
Yeah, it's paid off. I mean, I've seen a heck of a lot more deer than I was being away from them. A lot of times with those bedding areas, especially here, I don't like to get too tight on them unless you have to. But I've seen a lot more deer. I let one walk last week, and it was one of those things. As soon as I let him walk, I was like, oh. But again, I just get so focused on one or two of them that that's what I tend to wait for. But I'm seeing a lot more deer just moving tight, and I had some trail cams going, and what those were telling me that they were just in those thick areas, weren't moving much, and cold weather hasn't come, so it didn't really push them around either. So they were just hanging pretty tight for that whole like a 3 or 4 week stretch in November. That it was really weird. You didn't really see a rut either. I mean, you could see it. They were scraping, but during the day, it's just everything shut right down. You really didn't see that day rut like we're used to. It was just everything was at night, and we had some temperatures in mid-November that were pushing like 55, 60. Even in the evenings. So it's just really warm.
Gotcha, yeah. And I'd say that that strange weather played a role here in Ohio too. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think a lot of hunters across the Midwest has experienced the same situation. As far as the blood moon for one coming in, the warmer climate, and late acorn drop, and there's all different strategies that play a role into the whitetail movement and how they're reacting to the weather and what's going on in the woods. And I had to agree with you on the not seeing much activity during the rut. It was the strangest rut here in Ohio I've ever experienced, but I guess that's why we adapt and move on and move different things around. Now, out there where you're at, what's the rut schedule look like normally?
Oh, the rut? Yeah, typically, usually you can mark on your calendar November 11th as being the best day. So it's usually right in and around there from 7 to 12 or 13 are usually the best 4 or 5 days. Last year I shot a beautiful deer right on November 11th. So usually it's those days, and I make it a point to be home and not traveling around those days. But even this year, it's just unseasonably warm, and again the bucks were there, but you could tell they just weren't moving. I mean, I've got some pieces of property that pretty much year over year I can dial in. I'll see certain bucks on several different cameras, and I like that just because it tells me at least they're moving and I'm seeing them in different places. Well, this year, the 2 big ones that I was really watching, I literally got them on the same camera every night and not on any of the others, which is kind of unheard of. I always, the pieces aren't that big, so when the bucks are moving around looking for those, I will usually get those big bucks on 2 or 3 cameras, and it just didn't happen this year. And that's the first time it's been like that I can remember. So you pretty easily told me they just weren't moving around. They had their little harem of does in their pile of acorns, and they were just staying pretty tight to the cover.
How many trail cameras do you run on a particular one spot?
On average, I'm usually, during the season, I kind of buckle it down to, my top 6 or 7. Going into the season, I'll run 10 or 12, just kind of watching things. But I did get into one of those covert cameras this year that send it wirelessly to your cell phone. And boy, that's addicting. It's addicting. The problem with it is, one of the really nice pictures I got was a beautiful buck. I was sitting in my office at 7:45 one morning, and the picture came through, and I wasn't sitting in the tree. So that's the only problem with those cameras is, you're sitting in the wrong place getting the photos.
Yeah, but, I can totally see how that could play a huge role mentally.
Yeah. And I've kind of gotten addicted to the cameras. Number one, because it's a great tool, but for me, with my travel schedule and the amount of time I spend on the road, it's just really nice that, I can spend more time with the cameras. And that way, when I do get time to hunt, I know I'm putting myself in the top 2 or 3 places. And that's what it's all about for me. It's really a timing thing more than anything else. Right.
Does the wind direction play a factor in the way you hunt?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A few of the pieces I'm all for clothing and scent control, but at the end of the day, I'm old school. If you play the wind, you can be wearing just about anything. So I'm pretty particular about certain stands that I hunt. And, if I get a good stand and there's a good buck going in there and it's just the wrong wind, I don't even go in. I just, that's my philosophy, just wait for the right day and don't force it. I think a lot of guys here, that's the mistake they make. And I know everyone's pressured to hunt with work life and everything else that goes on that, you get a day and you want to go. But I just really pick the right days. And I think that probably has made me more successful here than anything else. Is if I got a good buck around, just don't blow him out of it. Just let him do his thing and wait for the right day.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And ideally, I guess the wind factor, I think you could probably go hunting and smell like a fresh can of diesel fuel if the wind's blowing the right direction. Deer are going to walk in front of you. Just a strategy that everybody talks about the wind direction, and that's something that plays sounds to me that plays a huge factor in your setup there in Rhode Island.
Yep, absolutely. And they're small little pieces, like I said, so you don't want to go in there and have that wind blowing right into his bedding area. Just I find that, I probably learned that from experience, that you think that buck's going to be there. As soon as you blow him out, you don't see him for a while.
Right. When you talk about you're close to a bedding area, how close yardage-wise are you actually getting to their bed?
I think for me, it just depends. It depends on the piece. Like there have been days that I get right in there, and I do like to hunt those windy days when the wind is in the right direction, because if I have stands in those spots that, if I can get into them and not spook the deer, because I know the wind's coming out of there and I can be pretty quiet, I'll get pretty tight. I mean, the deer are a little different here in Rhode Island. It's just, again, they're used to some noise. Somebody slamming doors in the backyard, the guy starting his car, the dog barking. So they're used to things like that. And I've got some old tricks that I use. I had one stand 2 years ago that it was pretty tight to the bedding, and it was pretty tight to the guy's backyard that I was hunting in. So this kid had a leaf blower, and he would leaf blow quite a bit. So the day that I shot the big one, I went over there. I knew I was going on that stand. I had the kid blow the leaf blower for about 20 minutes while I walked into my stand. And, because you can't hear anything when he's doing it, I snuck in and, the kid shut the leaf blower down. 20 minutes later, here comes the deer. So I'm not going to lie, I use little tricks like that sometimes too.
Yeah, it makes sense though. Now let's get into late season. All of our great friends that are tuning in with us weekly here. Let's talk a little bit about your late season strategy. It's the temperature's starting to get colder and the weather's changing. What are you going to do now?
It's all about the food. Find out where they're eating. That's why I love snow. It covers up the acorns, and you can really focus in on where they're eating. Someone once told me these big old bucks, they're like old dogs. All they really want to do, other than when it's ruddy, all they really want to do is sleep and eat. So the problem is late season, if there's still acorns on the ground, they're going to just kind of hole up and not do too much. But once we get a little snow and they got to move to eat, that's when I love to get on them. But yeah, it's all about the food this time of year. They know it's coming as much as we do, so they want to get, those big boys want to hopefully put a little weight back on before it all comes.
Right. Are they focusing on acorns where you're at, or what's their food source?
Yeah, right now it's still the acorns, because we still have quite a few of them. The leaves have covered them up pretty good, but the deer are still finding them. I've got some places that have pretty good fields, but there's no standing corn or anything like that. And, if they plant some winter rye, that's always good. But for me, I'll kind of go back this time of year to those acorn ridges that they were hitting early season. I find that deer tend to, at least in Rhode Island, tend to be a little bit habitual. If they ate really good there early season, they'll tend to go back late season.
Right, and I'm assuming from experiences here in Ohio, if you find a ridge where it's full of acorns, it'll look like the hogs have been in there rooting, and it's actually deer in there rolling the leaves over.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
hey, my philosophy any time of year is just, if you can find the does, you'll find the bucks. Even after the rut, I still feel like the bucks, they're a little bit social, or they're at least poking around a little bit to still see if there's any does that need tending. So, I always kind of take the philosophy, find the does. Sooner or later, you're going to find a buck there.
Right,
the does are there for a reason.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
And the does taste really good, too.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. So now that you're set up on a food source, what kind of stand are you using?
I use a lot of permanent stands just because the property's not too big, so I'll use some ladder stands. I mean, I do use climbers a lot during the rut. The only problem I find with the climbers late season, it just gets so cold here that it can be tough moving up and down a frozen tree. So I tend to use some of the permanent ones that I've got a little bit more late in the season, just because you can get up and down quieter. But and I've been hunting these pieces of property that I've got here. I've been hunting them for years, so we've got stands set up. We know which stands might be better early season, which might be better during the rut, and certainly which ones are going to be better later in the season. So we kind of got things dialed into that point. But I do like using climbers. It just when you get in those really, really cold days and you're bundled up and you got gloves on and the tree's frozen, and it just gets really tough for me anyways. Maybe I'm getting older and softer in my old age, but it gets harder to use.
Yeah, I understand that. And I'd say there's more of a safety issue that plays a role when the trees get frozen. everything gets cold, and you start to run into putting your life in danger, and that's something that is always discouraged. That you make a smart decision and enjoy your hunt and not be suffering, maybe even lose your life from a mistake of trying to climb when the frigid temperatures hit.
Yep, with the ice and everything in it. Actually, it's funny. The last 2 years, I've kind of been addicted to trying to get them on the ground. I just love being that close to them on the ground. I mean, if I'm really hunting one big one, I know it's tough to get them on the ground. But I took my daughter out Sunday and just sat on the ground. We had 4 or 5 does come right in. Her eyes were wide open. And, it's just I love being on the ground with them, too.
Yeah, that's a unique experience in its own.
Yeah, you can outsmart one on the ground. You're doing something right.
Yeah, something every hunter should experience for sure.
Yeah, I've gotten a few with my bow on the ground, 12 yards, 15 yards kind of thing, and it's pretty awesome.
No doubt about it. Yeah, that's no easy task. That's you're on their turf.
Yeah, but I will say this: for every one I've gotten, I've probably blown 7 of them.
Right. Yeah, that's a chance you take.
Yep. But it's especially this time of year. I mean, you can find the runs pretty easy, and if they're moving, I had like I said, took my daughter out the other night. The night before that, I was out, and I had a nice little 6-point come by, and he walked right by me, never even knew I was there. I just love it.
No, it's intense when you're on the ground. I love it myself.
Yeah, whole different ball of wax.
Absolutely. Jay, you want to get into taking us on a hunt?
Yeah. I wanted to pick your brain about a recent hunt you might have been on, a memorable hunt. Before I get into that, I had one question for you. What's your philosophy on hunting? Meaning, what does hunting mean to you?
Well, that's a good question. It's a tricky question. It's a tricky question for me because me as a person, I grew up. We hunted. It wasn't about trophy size. It wasn't about size of antlers. We just hunted. We hunted as a family. My father got me into it. My brother's a huge hunter. It was all, I'm not going to say it was totally about meat because, we just enjoyed being out in the field. And then the meat was a byproduct of that. And I grew up on it. And, we always grew up having a freezer in the garage and hopefully putting 2 or 3 deer in there for the year to, feed everybody. So it was more about that. Obviously, as I've gotten older, it's for me now, it's definitely about the challenge. I just love the challenge of it. It doesn't have to be. I do love to shoot big deer. There's no question about it. Who doesn't? But I don't get so wrapped up in score. And I think one of the tough things for our industry right now is, with all those big deer coming out of Canada and even Ohio, where I know you guys hunted, I think sometimes the hunters get a little too focused on what he scored, and I think it takes away from the hunt. And I think for me, that's why I get kind of tuned in on one deer, because it kind of form a relationship with him, and it has that challenge aspect, and that's the part of this whole thing that I love. I mean, I've always loved the physical challenge. I was an athlete my whole life, but my knees don't work as well as they used to. So that's why I just love the mental challenge of hunting, whether it's the cold weather, whether it's an animal that's outsmarted me several times, or, anything else that it might be. But for me, it's about the challenge. And obviously now, too, it is, I do love the meat. I mean, I have given to my family what my father gave to me. Our freezer we're going into Christmas, and our freezer is pretty full for the next year. So, my daughter loves elk meat. She's only 7 years old. She's already shooting a bow, and I took her out the other night and we let those does go. And her first thing to me was, Dad, it's good. I'm glad we let the does go. So she's learning conservation, and she's learning about filling the freezer. So I think at the end of the day, that's what's for me. I mean, there's another side of me that it gets a little commercial. I mean, obviously I host a television show about hunting, so we have an agenda there. But even when I'm filming those shows, I try not to make it about the agenda. I try to just, let's go out, let's be hunters, let's do what we love to do, and that'll come through on the show too. But, there's a certain amount of pressure to coming up with 10 to 15 new hunting shows every season. So, that part of it, I'll be honest with you, there are nights that I think about that. That part bothers me a little bit because it's not the way I grew up. I grew up traditional. It was about the hunt. It was about your family. It was about the meat, things like that. It wasn't about getting a TV show.
Right.
So,
Gotcha. All right.
But
That makes sense.
nature of the beast.
Yep. All right. So let's go on a deer hunt with you, Dean. Where are we going to go?
Yeah. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, I was kind of hooked on the Canadian thing with those giant whitetails up there. But the last few years, for me, it's been Kansas.
Okay.
Just loving Kansas right now. I mean, I've had some awesome experiences out there. What I love about Kansas that I don't get in Rhode Island is deer act like deer. The problem in Rhode Island, you got to wait till the guy goes to work and until the car pulls out, till the leaf blower shuts off. You have these small pieces, and a lot of times I think it's why we have a lot of nocturnal deer down here because there's so much movement during the day. But you go to Kansas on some of these huge farms, and deer act the way they're supposed to. You get movement during the day. That's what I love about it out there.
Gotcha. All right. That's interesting perspective, and I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go on that memorable deer hunt. Let's slow it down, a little play by play, piece by piece. Really get into some of the nitty gritty details of the hunt. So we're going to Kansas. What time of year is this?
We usually do that hunt. That gun season is either late November or early December.
Okay. All right. And what year?
I've been up there for several years, but I didn't go this year. Last year I was there, and then the 2 previous years before that.
All right. And what year are we going to go on your memorable hunt? What year are we going back to?
We're gonna go. We're gonna go 2 years ago.
2 years ago. All right. So 2014.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Very good.
Yep.
All right.
So we had some frigid cold weather. The deer were moving. They were still rutting. It was one of those hunts where you were seeing, I would say, 30 to 40 deer a day. Maybe
wow.
5 to 10 bucks a day, and the big ones were moving. It was it was action all day long. Like, it was amazing. Like, where we were in Kansas, he used to have us come back in for lunch, and after day one, I just looked at him. I said, "No." I said, "I'm in Kansas. It's crazy. Pack me a lunch. I'm not coming back. Drop me off and pick me up at dark." So, I just love it.
Wow.
I love being around deer. Yeah, I love. It's just a great place to hunt. And again, they act like deer. They were rutting. They were chasing the does. You were seeing the big ones fight. I mean, it was just awesome.
Gotcha. All right. And is there a particular deer that you were after during this hunt?
You know what? It's funny. There were 2 deer that we were after, and we had some trail cam pictures of one, and he was a big 8-pointer, and I'm such a sucker for like a big mainframe, big 8-pointer, and we hunted, and there was this other one who was a giant that we didn't see all week. We just had him on camera, and I saw the 8-pointer. That was the 4th morning. The 4th morning of the hunt, the 8-pointer came in, and when I saw him on the hoof, he wasn't as impressive as he was in the pictures. And I let him walk. I texted the outfitter and I said, "Oh, he just came out. I let him walk in." I thought, you could hear the outfitter's text. Like, "What? Are you nuts?" So sure enough, I had to come in that day because I had a phone meeting that I had to make a phone call. I said, "You at least have to come get me so I can get in the truck and I'll make the call and then I'll go back to the stand." So I get in the truck and I didn't get on the phone yet, and he was all over me that I let that deer go, and I'm like, he just wasn't as impressive as we thought he was. And we're driving down the road. I didn't even call the office yet, and the big one that we had seen was out in this cornfield at like 1,000 yards. Like, we knew it right away. We put the glasses on him. I mean, he had tickers coming out everywhere, and we just knew it was him.
Yeah.
So I ended up missing the meeting that day because I just, you see a deer like that in the cornfield and nothing is more fun.
Cancel the meeting.
I don't feel
Cancel that meeting immediately.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Cancel meeting. And we put probably a 3-hour stalk on him just because it wasn't much cover, and we kind of had to back all the way around, and he stayed out in the field. He was chasing does, and we could see him most of the time, but we just couldn't get on him, so we had to go all the way around the woods, and we ended up sneaking like 60 yards from that deer, and I smoked him. It was just, you do all that sitting, you do all that waiting, and then I had a spot and stalk whitetail, huge. He scored. What did he score? He was 160, 168. So he was a big deer, and just spot and stalk in Kansas like that in a big cornfield was just an awesome hunt.
That's awesome. And was it a gun?
Yeah, that was gun. But where he was we came out of this little wood lot, and we thought it was going to be about a 200-yard shot from there. And by the time we came out of the woods, he had just moved closer, and we popped our head down. He's standing right there at, like, whatever it was, 60 yards or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Smoking. Yeah, it was awesome.
It's nice when they show up a little closer than you had hoped.
Yeah, isn't it? I mean, hey, I'm comfortable with a rifle, but if I can take a 60-yard shot, I'll take it.
The closer the better, generally speaking, until they get to like 10 yards with a gun. That's a hard shot. I don't know if you ever had to do that. That's not an easy shot to take.
No, you gotta have a certain distance. It makes it a little easier.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's pretty cool. You canceled the meeting and shot the big one that you had been looking for, and passed on the one that was supposed to be a decent one, but turned out not to look so good when you met him face to face. That's a pretty good story.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, I've got 10 rapid fire questions for you, Dean. One we've kind of already covered, but I'm going to ask you again. Or I'm going to ask you the question, even though you know what it is now. Are you ready?
I am ready for rapid fire.
All right. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Number one hunting tip is never forget your binoculars.
Very good. All right. This might apply to the question number one. What's that one thing that you cannot hunt without? It drives you crazy if you leave it in the truck.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to make it two quick ones. I mean, obviously the gun and the rifle scope is the most important, but for me, it's definitely about binoculars, because if I forget my gun, at least I got a fighting chance to find out where the deer are for tomorrow.
Gotcha. All right, very good. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Ooh, that's a tough one. My biggest pet peeve in life, people that apologize for everything they do.
Interesting. All right, very good.
Yeah.
How old are you today, Dean?
I am 45.
45. What would you tell the 25-year-old Dean CAPUANO, knowing what you know today?
I would probably tell him, don't be so serious about yourself. At 25, you'll figure it out.
Okay. All right, very good.
I was a pretty intense guy.
Okay, fair enough. All right, you're at a hotel convention somewhere in the world, and you meet a stranger in the lobby of the hotel. They strike up a conversation, and they ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
I tell them I handle all the marketing for Swarovski Optic, and you know what? I need to tell more people that, because people ask my family what I do, and they say I hunt for a living, so I don't want that getting around too much.
Gotcha. All right, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had scrambled egg.
Nice. You get your own billboard on the side of a highway. It's a blank canvas. You can put anything that you want on it. What would it say?
About me?
Anything you want. It could be about you.
Anything I want.
Yep.
It would say, I don't want to make it political, so I'm going to stay out of the political. I'm going to put something up nowadays about field to table.
Okay.
I think we as hunters need to promote that more, because that is a theme that's growing, and I think it can really help bridge the gap between hunters and the rest of the world.
Sure. I like that. That's a very good concept. I think you're right. I think we need to explore more of that. All right. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head, and why?
My cousin Jack. He's the head coach of the New York Islanders, and he's a guy I respect. Amazing what he's done with his career.
Very cool. What's a day in the life of Dean CAPUANO look like?
It's all over the board.
Okay.
It's a mess lately. It's a rapid-fire answer. I am going in 40 directions. So one of the hardest parts about my job is, I host a TV show, but the rest of the marketing doesn't go away. So, I'm on the phone, I'm talking to VIPs, it's all over the place. Okay.
So there's no one day that's the same.
No, thank God.
Does it start at the same time every day?
Yeah, my day starts about 5:15 every single day. Well, normal day starts at 5:15, unless I'm at hunting camp, then it might be earlier.
Okay. All right. Well, when does it usually end?
It's on a normal work week when I'm in the office. My day ends about 8:30, 9 o'clock. I've had enough.
Okay. And let's say you're deer hunting for the day. What's that day look like?
For me, the perfect deer hunting day is getting in the stand 45 minutes before the sun comes up. There in the woods, wake up in the morning, shooting the deer that I want about 8:15, getting him to the truck, and going for breakfast. That's the perfect day.
That's a good day right there, man. I love that kind of day. Very, very good. Well, that's the 10 rapid-fire questions, Dean. I'd say you passed. You did quite well. Dean,
that's good, because I never really passed a lot of tests, so that's good.
There you go. So you aced that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Dean, where can we find more about you and what you've got going on in your TV show and Swarovski if we want to know more?
Yeah, we put all that stuff up on our website at www.swarovski.com. I'm not a huge social media guy. I do more Instagram than anything else, so it's Dean CAPUANO on Instagram. I do Facebook, but I'm much more active on the quick, short Instagram type stuff. It's more my style.
Gotcha. All right, very good, man. Well, I appreciate you taking some time to come back on the show and tell us about where you've been over the last, 65 shows or so. And looking forward to talking to you again. Maybe we'll come up with some other interesting topics that people will want to hear about, and we'll create another show around that.
Sounds good. Anytime you guys want me, I'll be here.
It's always a pleasure to talk to Dean and find out what he's doing these days. And I always learn something when I talk to Dean. And it's nice to know that Swarovski's in good hands. He's got a good TV show. He's a good deer hunter. And I need to join him down in Rhode Island here pretty soon for some deer hunting in January because I can't do it where I live.
Yeah, you need to do that.
I really do. Fantastic interview with Dean as usual. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
Yeah, we do, Jay.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
It's going to get into a little bit of late season hunting, and now's the time. The weather conditions are cold. Your scent value is going to be less because of the colder air temps, and now's the time to go for that walk and find that food source. If you're not on a food source where you're hunting, make the time to go in the woods, do a midday scout. Just go for a little walk. You're going to be able to see, with the freeze and the thaw, and you're going to be able to see a muddy deer trail that maybe you missed in the early season and you overlooked or just didn't get that deep in the woods. But find where them deer are moving at, and all the cards are laid on the table right now as far as mud trails where they're walking. If you got snow, that's a good way to get a visual. But yeah, focus on trying to locate where the deer are moving from bedding to food back to bedding. Most of the time, let's say 90% of the time, they'll educate you where they're going by scat or footprints or snow markings where they've come through. You'll have to just go in and dig around and put the pieces to the puzzle together and capitalize on the puzzle that they've laid out there once you put it together.
Dude, I think that is probably one of the best tips that I can wrap my head around this time of year. I don't know if there's anything that you can do that's more important than getting out in the woods at this very moment to see where they're traveling. It's perfect. It's perfect time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Just get out there and go for the stroll and check it out. I mean, it's no better time to get educated than now.
Completely agree. Fantastic. And thanks to the Scentlock Enforcer for sponsoring the show. Thanks to the Euro Hanger for joining us for one more round. And thank you to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines tip of the week. Dusty, it's been a fantastic show. And unfortunately, it's time for us to go. But where can we find you when you're not hanging out in Big Buck Studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Facebook, Chubby Tines Outdoors. And if you're on Instagram, @ChasingAntler, shoot me a follow, and I'll try to accept and follow you back and hang out with you. Jay, where can the people reach out with you when you're not on the mic?
Very cool. Well, obviously, if you're going to SHOT Show, as we had mentioned, shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com. We're going to be at SHOT Show January 17th through the 21st. So if you're going to be there, let me know. If you'd like to reach out to us otherwise, just email is probably the best, jay@bigbuckregistry.com. You can always find us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. And if you would like to have your buck featured on that Facebook page, as 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans are following you, and be famous for a day, all the instructions can be found at bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck. We could very much use your support for this show. It's that time of year where we're looking for some new sponsorships, and we could use support from people just like you. And if you would like to donate and help us bring you great content each and every week, please go to our website and check out our Patreon account, and that's bigbuckregistry.com/donate.
Even if it's $1 a week, that goes a long way.
anything that you have that you feel you can donate to help our cause, so that we can bring you great interviews with great hunters. And that means we have to travel on occasion, and that costs money. We have production costs. It costs money to make this show, whether you like it or not. Unfortunately, as much as we enjoy doing this, there's a budget that has to be settled at the end of the year. So we need your help. BigBuckRegistry.com/donate. You can find us on social media as usual. Facebook.com/BigBuckRegistry, Twitter.com/BigBuckRegistry, YouTube.com/BigBuckRegistry, Instagram.com/BigBuckRegistry. You can listen to the show on multiple places, multiple tunes, or multiple podcast directories, including iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Blueberry, and every audio that we put out is now featured on our YouTube page. So BigBuckRegistry.com/YouTube. Dusty, it's been another fantastic show. Thank you for joining me, my friend, and we'll come back and do it again next week. My name is Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.